Hey everyone, it's Jay.
And Sean.
And we watched a movie.
Yeah, we did.
So it is called Stardust. And it is a David Bowie biopic, more or less. So it is a pretty narrow time frame of knowing David before he was really David Bowie. But he was on his way. He should have been there, really. He'd already released some of his greatest stuff, and yet people were not into it. They didn't get it yet.
Yeah.
Of course,
they didn't know what to make of him.
No, they did not. David Bowie is not just a man who was ahead of his time. He is beyond all time. And, he was a bit of a tough sell.
Yeah.
Somehow, even though he's totally magical and wonderful.
Yeah.
So this particular movie follows him on his first trip to America. It's 1971. He has not had real great breakout success in Britain either at this point, but he's determined to break out in America because of course you've got to do that. So off he goes on his first tour, except that his North American publicist, Ron Oberman, has no budget for this tour. None whatsoever. And and Ron is pretty sure it wasn't him. He's pretty adamant it wasn't him. But somebody messed up Bowie's visa. And he is not allowed to work in the US while he's there. So he's not allowed to perform at all. So it's going to be a really fun tour. I think David Bowie is figuring out who he is as a person, as a performer, as a musician. And so even though he doesn't get to perform, and this will not be his big breakout tour in America, he's getting exposed to different people and places and different musical influences. Oberman is kind of legit that way. He does have an in to a lot of this stuff. So he's picking up all kinds of ideas. And the only thing he is allowed to do is talk. So Oberman puts him in front of a lot of journalists who are confused by who David Bowie is and what he's about. And I think maybe David Bowie is a little confused too. Although, do the copious amount of drugs help? No. No, they do not. And then he's constantly phoning his wife back home, Angie. And Angie is very pregnant and a little bitter. I think she also wanted to be a big star. Although big star here is, again, Bowie is not Bowie yet. So she's mostly angry on his behalf because this was not what he was promised, but also on her own behalf because she's barefoot and pregnant.
It's not what she was promised, probably.
Correct. So we've got Johnny Flynn as David Bowie, the wonderful and hilarious Marc Maron as Ron Oberman, and Jena Malone as Angie Bowie. Did you like the movie, Sean?
It's not as good as I had hoped.
Okay.
I was hoping for great things from this movie, and it doesn't deliver that. It's still interesting. Mm-hmm. If you're a fan of David Bowie, like I didn't know this historical artifact of both that, he was not a big deal even after having released like a major album.
Some of our favorite songs.
Some huge songs. Mm-hmm. And also that, yes, his tour was not so messed up because he couldn't perform. Well,
he did perform in front of those vacuum
people, that's right,
you may remember.
The vacuum
that great
convention.
Success, yeah.
Yeah, they did not respond to him very well.
They did not. Some might argue not his target audience. Although we didn't know who his target audience was, and so far it was nobody. Nobody was buying David Bowie.
And it turned out it was everyone.
Yes. Hindsight. That has happened to a great many artists, I think.
Yes.
And luckily he was still around for a lot of it.
Absolutely.
I have to say, I wanted to love this movie, and I didn't like this movie. Like you said, there's some fairly interesting tidbits. It's kind of sad to see this very not even tepid, like pretty cold introduction to America. But because I know it's David Bowie, and I just wasn't feeling any David Bowie. And I don't want to knock Johnny Flynn, who plays him. I don't think that was great casting, but maybe not the worst casting, but I just never felt like he was David Bowie. I never bought into it at all. And I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that there is not a single David Bowie song in a David Bowie movie. So I don't know whose bright idea it was to make a movie without the music. And I think, the family turned down director Gabriel Rain down hard. They turned him down cold. He decided to go ahead with it anyways, because he's also co-writer on the script. And he chose this specific tour where Bowie wasn't allowed to perform, I guess, to get around the fact that he had no access to music. But the thing to remember about that tour is that it failed miserably. It didn't work. Yeah. And neither does the movie. We're not here to just sit in cars with David Bowie. We want to hear, we're talking about all of these great songs, and then he's also picking up all of these influences that are going to come out in his next 2 albums. And yet we don't hear a single Bowie song, guys. That's insane.
Yeah, that is really puts them at a disadvantage, and I think you're right that they shouldn't have pressed on because you miss it. You absolutely.
Of course, you miss it. There's just no point. David Bowie, as he points out in the movie, is a character, is a an alter ego, is a musician and a singer, a songwriter. David Bowie is not really much without the music. And of course, during this time in America in 1971, he's also sort of absorbing all the bits and pieces that will become Ziggy Stardust when he gets back home and starts recording again. So obviously, we missed the Ziggy Stardust phase in its original glory, but this guy was like an androgynous, asexual, rock star alien alter ego. David Bowie is a stage name already, and then he has extra layers of alter egos on top of that. He had this whole thing about he's come down from Mars and he's going to be the savior because some apocalyptic event is going to happen. And basically he's addicted to fame and he seduces everyone. And at the end of the album, he actually dies of his fame. So that's a pretty heavy concept. And many of those bits and pieces were picked up as his souvenirs from his American tour. And I feel like we don't even get to see much of that. Of course, he's not allowed to write the songs that he's going to put in this album. We get nothing from it. So it's kind of one big tease. And it never pays off. It never really feels authentically Bowie. I don't know. I was never into the movie. And when we got to the end, and I was like, what was the point? What was the point?
Needed more Marc Maron.
Well, that's the thing. I am not faulting performances here, and certainly Marc Maron is a favorite of ours. And he was wonderful in this. He has this caustic humor that's pretty great coming against David Bowie, who is almost genuinely from out of this world. This is not a culture clash between two people, although it is, but it's also a generational clash, just every way. And yet they speak music, they speak the same language. And they've got some stuff to show each other and teach each other. So there's a mutual respect there. But, it is a bizarre relationship that starts out weird and gets weirder. It's a more intimate relationship than probably Superstar and his publicist normally have. But when you kick off the tour living in his mom's basement, exactly. It's a shoestring budget, so they are just driving themselves across America and sharing meals and hotel rooms and
vacuum sales, conventions.
Oh, break my heart. So, I don't know.
Well, I
if
think
you
it's
are,
a miss,
yeah, it is a miss. Unless you are a diehard completist who just really needs to know every little fact about Bowie. I'm sure that none of this will surprise you.
I guess that's the conundrum we run into, right? Is if you are a big fan, this stuff probably won't even surprise you.
Yeah. So, it is hitting theaters and will be available digitally and on demand on November 27th. Certainly this is not something to go risk COVID over. I think you can pretty safely miss it. If you have any passing interest, I would wait until it's free.
Yeah.
When it hits a streaming service, give it a try, I guess. But I don't know, for, Marc Maron and Jena Malone make me think this is going to be a big movie. Certainly we probably deserve a David Bowie movie, although I do think it is going to be very difficult to capture that guy in any way. Even just for a very small space in time, which I think is probably the best idea to have.
I think that is a good idea.
He was such a chameleon.
So
yeah, exactly. Way too much to to possibly get through in 90 minutes.
Yeah.
But
you gotta have the music.
Yeah.
And you have to have someone with his presence. And who is that? As you said, that's a hard get.
Yes. If it was set a little later on in time, I would be on team Tilda Swinton for the role.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I think we could get more out of that way. But yeah, this wasn't it, guys. Sorry. So she's a miss. But the good news is there's always another movie around the corner. And you don't have to rely on a movie to hear David Bowie. You can throw it on the record player right now. That's right. That's the best way. He put it all on his albums. So thanks for watching. Bye.